In my previous video, I was talking about how to deploy a really useful AI strategy, and this is chapter number 2. I was talking about the many different use cases that we can have in AI, and so I want to show you how I prioritize all of the different projects that might come up of the first exercise. I have 3 blocks over here, and these 3 blocks and these 9 questions serve the premises of how I triage projects and how I make sure that they serve me for the purpose that I'm trying to achieve. Okay, the first thing is business value. And why do I start with business value? Value is in general the way in which you measure financial success. So the value that you deliver to a client is normally proportional to the revenue of that company or the profit that that company makes. And this is why it's important to start with this one. Business is the correlation between actionability and feasibility in AI, and I'll get to that in a second. So, how do I make sure that it drives value for the business? The first thing is, does it move the needle for the team and the customers? And special emphasis first on the team side of things. And this is really important to understand because having a really positive culture is going to help you a lot to adopt, which is something that we're going to see in the next block. And it's going to help you to deliver excellent customer service. So super important, especially on your team side. How does it support the strategic priorities? This is kind of like a loop. So in the first video, I was talking about how the corporate might have a strategic priority. So linking an AI implementation to that is going to make you look really good with the board of directors. But you need to make sure that it's still linked to the value. Just because it's good for the board of directors, it doesn't mean that it's going to make a successful implementation, okay? Can we extend it and reuse it for future use cases? Normally, agentic systems, when you develop them properly, they have lots of commonalities across. So you can have a base framework or a base agent that you can then modify and you can adapt to certain niche cases. An example of this is if you have a system that, for example, uses web search, which is very common these days, the base agent can then have another tool that, for example, looks at your CRM data. The way in which the information is extracted and then fed into the agent looks a lot like the ETL or extract, transform, and load in data engineering. That's a technical topic, but you just need to keep in mind that you want to reuse everything and you want to have the basis right. Now, actionability and feasibility normally correlate to the business value that you're going to get out of any AI project. First things with actionability is that we need to think about the quality of models, okay? Now, you might be wondering, why are you saying something like that? We can use ChatGPT or we can use Claude or Gemini or anything like that. That is correct, but in current big corporations, we've seen a tendency to go to SLMs. So SLMs are small language models. And if you think of it from the perspective of fallbacks and risks, having a specific small model doing a very specific task is safer than trying to give a large model lots of different tasks or for a large model to kind of guess what the next steps should be. So I tend to think about implementations or AI implementations in a way that they allow me to follow a process from A to B in a very sequential way, and there might be lots of ramifications, but I want to insert AI in very specific points to make sure that I'm under control as much as possible on the technical side. I do this because I know that debugging AI pipelines is quite complicated. In fact, it's probably the most challenging thing that there is in AI implementation, and this is why I make this choice. I see a lot of large companies following the same route, and it's for this exact reason. You want to have as much control as possible of everything that's going on, so you can debug it, you can react fast, and all those type of things, right? This links with how easily can I deploy it in my business, okay? You want to make sure that any AI project is seeing the light of day as fast as possible, right? This is where MVPs are really useful. This is where you need to think about what is the minimum feature that I need to deploy for us to see what the use case looks like and for us to see what is the value that the customer is seeing, and also what is the value that they're willing to pay for in that sense, okay? Now the adoption links to our internal team, right? How often have we seen in the news lately things like the latest one was Taco Bell, in which they put a lot of AI systems for their order intake, and they were taking orders wrong, right? Deploying a system in that way, in which you probably are taking some jobs away without being fully certain of what that AI is going to deliver, is killing your reputation. Don't do that. We've seen it with Duolingo as well. They were saying that they were AI first, and they got massive backlash. We've seen it with Klarna. They were the first ones probably saying like, we've removed customer service, everything is AI, and another massive backlash. AI is very smart, and in the future I'm sure that AI is going to do lots of things for us, but in the current state of AI, today, 2nd of September of 2025, AI is the middle layer. You need AI on the thinking front end, on the planning, and you also need it on the delivery to confirm that everything is done correctly. The last thing is the drive value for the organization on actionability is how fast can I get money back, right? How fast can I charge a customer for it? It links to the MVP, it links to all of those things. Now, the feasibility. One of the first questions that I normally ask when I'm sitting in front of somebody is like, do you really need AI for that? Sometimes people just want to complicate things, or they want to embed AI into a system for their only purpose of saying, we're going to put a 20% markup on this just because it's AI. And it shouldn't be. I normally talk about how value shouldn't be linked to the hours that you spend on something, but that is not an excuse to try and add complexity or fancy technology to something for the sake of adding price. It's not the way that it is. So is AI the right thing to do in the first place? The thing that normally businesses struggle with is data. And data sources in general are very, very messy in many businesses, especially small and medium enterprise. They don't have really good databases. They mostly work on Excel spreadsheets. It happens in the company that I'm working in. It's very easy to just pull an Excel spreadsheet and kind of like disguise it as a database, right? If you are in a situation where you don't know if you have a good data system in place, that's fine, you can work with that, but just be aware that the more trustworthy and the more capable your data system is, the higher the chances that your AI project succeeds, okay? And the last thing is what happens if the system fails, right? So I talk about in a previous podcast, I was talking about how AI is making us think less and taking away the critical thinking. So that's one of the first things that you need to think about. If an AI system fails, can a human step in and actually carry that work, right? You don't want to be in one of these situations where this is kind of like a nuclear reactor, in terms of if the nuclear reactor goes down, then the whole plant needs to go down because nobody else can do anything with it, right? Hopefully you don't want to be in a situation like that. You want to still be able to service your clients even if the system fails. And also what happens if the system gives you the wrong answer. This goes back to kind of like to the deployment and the infrastructure, how you can monitor your infrastructure, but you want to be aware of these things beforehand, right? And with these three things, we can create a nice little matrix that I have over here. So over here, we're going to have something that basically in here you're going to have actionability, and then down here you're going to have feasibility. And what you try and do is you're going to be looking at the line that delivers value, right? So, oops. Right? So up here at the top is where you have what I call your unicorns or dreams, okay? So this is a dream. Why? Because if you have something in which AI is the right answer, that you have data available, and that you're clear on what happens when the system fails, and also it's easy to deploy and maintain, and it drives value fast for your company, then you have a dream, right? Like not many businesses have that. So this is the perfect scenario in terms of like, this is the golden hands, and this is what drives the highest value, right? Now, I'm not even going to talk about the things that happen here. So you want to be thinking about this middle section. So The middle section is the one that allows us to think if you have something that is high value, so easy to deploy, massive revenue, so you have dollars or you have pounds here, so really, really high. And the feasibility is kind of like, well, you know, we have data systems, but like, yeah, we need to work on that and so on. This should be a priority as well because of the higher revenue. And then you might have something over here, which is kind of like, it's easy to deploy, it's easy to see the systems failing, AI is the right answer for it, we know what happens when the system fails, and we have data available. This one is also like a really, really, really good situation to be in. So these type of projects, this triangle over here of unicorns, like high feasibility and high value, this triangle is where you want to be in, and this is how you prioritize all of this. Now, to actually know, for example, like the actionability on something, to see how much money it's going to bring, or to at least forecast, you're going to have to wait for part 3 of this. I'm going to be talking about metrics, and I'm going to be talking about the things that I do beforehand to deploy AA projects that I know that are going to move the needle and they're going to do everything that we want them to do. So stick around, I'll see you in the next one.